feedback is such a powerful way of having people engage in part and start to believe in process, and that feedback, whether it's positive or positive negative, or positive as a negative positive outcome, people crave that feedback, and whether that's through conversation, discussion, presentation, it doesn't matter. But once you open those lines and you enable them to be engaged in that, you'll be really surprised how those increments of sharing information lead to that trust element.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Few Podcast with me, Boo, and my rockstar co-host there, Shawnee. How are you, mate?
Awesome, mate. Great to be back.
It is great to be back. Yeah, we're
in person, 3-dimensional. I can actually touch you.
I know, it's been a while away from that virtual arena. I feel a bit nervous when I get out of home nowadays. I'm one of those people that kind of has to take baby steps as I walk out on the footpath. Interesting coming at the Few from a different angle today. We haven't really gone into the sports performance yet. We've got I think Patrick coming on soon. He's got a little bit of a sport tilt to what he does, and we're going to have a talk today about high performance in sport. We're looking at an elite sporting team, and we're super lucky to have head of performance for the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles in here today. Good mate of mine, Donny Singe. G'day, Donny. Thanks, mate, for coming on the show.
Welcome, Donny.
Hello, how are you, Boo? How are you, Sean?
Awesome, thank you.
Good, mate. So, mate, you've just come from training.
Just came home from training now, so as you know, Boo, firsthand, it's pre-season, so it's all hands on deck, and it's just go. So lots of action, lots of physicality, lots of mental application, and a ton of data to get through to make sure that we're staying on track.
So, Donny, not really much of an off-season this year. You're obviously part of the NRL. The NRL is one of our big football leagues here in Australia. We've just come out of the season heavily disrupted during COVID. What's it been like, Donny? How has professional sport like the NRL endured during COVID?
You know what? It's almost like we've all gone to different types of action stations. We've had to build citadels, we've had to isolate, we've had to change the entire way that we train and how we mix with people. We've had to, take whole teams and training environments and then put them into bubbles. And then not only that, we've had to deal with individuals, with players, with young players who are suddenly now become isolated themselves, and they can't mix with their families, and they can't. So we've had a tremendous amount of a shake-up in both the sport, in the application of our training, in the way we travel to and play games, in the way games have been, done without any spectators, and then at the end of the day, that athlete that we work so hard with, and it works to such a high intensity of physicality and mental levels every day, and then we're sending them home to an environment that doesn't have all the comforts of other human beings for a start, and the simple things in life. We're no different from anybody else. We know everybody has been through this, but the difference we have is that we have not changed what is required each day for competitive sport.
So it's a lot of intensity, and then not really escaping from the downtime. It's, I guess, if it was a commercial environment, it'd be like working in the office and sleeping in the office every day.
Yeah, it'd be like working in the office, sleeping in the office, and the same people every day in the office, and then going through a process every morning where you literally buddied up and checked each other's health status and and well-being, and that's while that sounds lovely, man, you do that every day, and
grind you down.
It's one of those things we've seen a lot of in 2020 is the whole mental health component of it. Is that we, as human beings, we're herd mammals, so we love to be around the people that we love and our friends and all the rest of it. But one thing that the COVID and the lockdowns and the restrictions, and obviously with the professional sporting arena, you've got to protect them from other people in the other environment so they don't bring it into the team. But have you seen that where have you seen that impact, I suppose, in the the mindset of your players?
I think the main thing has been, it's been the truest form of compliancy that we've ever seen in terms of not only the responsibility of having to get through that checklist of temperature check and filling out your wellness and filling out your whereabouts for the last 24 hours into every detail. And also, just how they plan, so people, they can't go and socialize. I think the biggest thing I've seen is a real shift in realizing the responsibility of that and getting that real taste of this is serious stuff, and it's stuff that only you can do. The coaches can't help you. You have to maintain and adhere to these rules, or it's over for you, and quite possibly by breaching those rules, it could be over for the entire team, and then by breaching that rule, it could be over for the entire competition.
Yeah, it's heady stuff, isn't it? Real character building stuff. So, Donny, give us a little bit of an insight, mate. What does the head of performance do, and what's your, I guess, history in terms of coming into this role? Is what you do today something that you always thought that you were going to do?
It isn't, but it's as you know, I am ex-military. I spent time in the Royal New Zealand Navy, and
that's okay, mate. You're still a reasonable bloke.
Yeah. You want to put a gag in so quickly? I'll put money. It's one I've never heard before. But what I do today, I think it's not so much that I wanted to do it. It seems like an almost organic, natural transition and evolution that I left the military, and I had, I believed, an abundance of absolutely useless skills. Because I'd been living on frigates and part of IS platoons and boats and done all this stuff. And what the hell does that have? What does that do with Civvy Street? What are you going to do? Run around? And so, but you know what? I quite early in my life realized that it wasn't so much what I learned. It wasn't so much the skills that I picked up in the military. What was most important was how I turned up every day and my mindset to connect to those skills, how I got to do these things that perhaps normal people or civilian life, the demands that were placed upon them physically and mentally, and the intensity and the integrity of having to work in units and groups, and those were the skills that I had. They were innate internal personality skills. They were innate internal application skills. So it wasn't about whether you could use weaponry or whether you could drive boats or whether you could, run a jackstay or whether you could do the helo and flight deck. It wasn't about that. What it was about, which I believe was quite instrumental in my success to transition from the military into Civvy Street. It was about why and how I did those things.
When was it that you found that passion start to really thrive in the concept of peak performance and working with other people to develop themselves?
If I can be really honest with you, and the story I tell you next is probably a story that every serviceman is going to say, is that, when I left the military, my girlfriend, who is now my wife, which is a fantastic indication of just how great a person I am. And I must be pretty good at other things too, because she's still
got a couple of sons. Yeah.
But one of the things she said to me was, all this energy. I was in my early 20s. There's all this energy and this drive, and however you wanted to look at it. What the hell are you going to do with that? Because you're going to have to contain that somehow. And it was then that, one of the things that I was always good with was physical things. I was, a very fit and enthusiastic individual in that area. So literally I made a decision that, and it was part by mistake and then part by process, that I would use my personality and my physical fitness to create a niche for myself where people could engage me, and I get paid for that. And a lot of that came about by by mistake. And well, when I say mistake, I mean people who recognized that and were able to draw on my energy, and then thought, oh, we'll keep this guy around, and now we'll pay him to be there. And I think that's when I really started feeling my connection to people, and feeling that that I could do a good job in this area with helping people to buy into whatever they believed in and they wanted, or helping groups to buy in to programs that were being run for them, and so I could help them succeed at those, whether you think of selection or whichever. And then finally being attractive to corporate and coaches and other sporting organizations who said, this guy has an ability to help us deliver these programs to the athletes or people.
So, Donny, you've been in high performance coaching, running HPUs, high performance units for quite a while now. Tell us a little bit about little Donny growing up. What was it like, mate? What was it like in terms of where did you get that physicality and drive and determination and energy from?
You just summed it up, Boo. Because I didn't get much bigger than the hand that you put up there, you know that. So, all we short guys are just angry, and we've got tips on our shoulders. Everyone else can wake up the next morning and things have changed, but we're still short. They're obviously
the intrinsic motivator of the few, yeah.
And then you add on to that, I'm black, so you can know, right? I'm telling you, things aren't going to be good for anybody who gets in my way. I wasn't the greatest academic. I didn't go to university until I was in my late 20s, and I only just got my master's in coaching and education, a couple of years back. So when it comes to academics and schooling and the intelligence type things, I wasn't I wasn't a leader in that field at all when I was at high school. However, I can remember teachers saying to me, I can remember Mr. Bainbridge in particular, and I can remember him saying to me, I don't know what you're going to do, mate. I don't know what you're going to do when you leave, but you'll be good at it. And I also, so I like to believe, because I come from a family and of 7 kids and parents, and we all grew up there, and I believe that I was probably lucky in that I had a lot of good development in emotional IQ. And I think that really helped me. And I know I've said this word a few times, it's popped out with connection, but I really believe even in the military, I was able to connect well. And I think that's, even as a young fella coming through, I knew I wasn't going to be the intellect, but I do believe I had personality. I do believe I had lots of energy. I could run like a bugger, and I could, I was fit as a fiddle, so I could really use those things, and be that energetic person that people wanted around. And then as I honed that craft into putting it into a process where, learning about PT, learning about exercise, learning about how to apply yourself as an instructor, that really punched me forward as a foundation.
And you've obviously worked with a lot of people in the high performance space. And what is the difference? What's the difference you see with somebody who's trying to crack in and be a high performer, but they actually don't manage to get there? Where do you feel? What lets them down? What's that tipping point between someone breaking through and somebody not?
I think it's the same as with you guys. You can have a tremendous amount of knowledge, and you can have a tremendous amount of even application, and you can have a tremendous amount of ability and qualification. But in order, it's how you get those things across. It's how your experiences, I believe, will give you the skills to apply those things with individuals and with groups, and it will teach you to read between the lines. I find that there are plenty of successful high performance coaches who really stay inside that the data type lane with the empirical knowledge and all the systems and the metrics, and they do a fantastic job. I think the difference is there's a few of us who are able to cross that line between the data, the metric, and the application of that into your program, your periodization. But we can also holistically view the development of an athlete or fellow coaches with their own self-evaluation, their own self-worth, their own self-esteem, helping them to learn, discover, and literally believe in what they are putting across that table to help the team get better. I really think that's a skill that we talk about explicit knowledge and tacit, and the explicit we know is that transferable knowledge where we read our books and we do our study, and that tacit, that's the stuff that's made up of experience and exposure to emotion, exposure to tragedy, exposure to the good things in life, and I think if you can, as you equalize and find that balance, I really believe that you step forward. And I think the performance coaches who hold their value as a conduit throughout entire coaching units, they're capable of that type of double explicit tacit type understanding.
So Donny, what about in a player? I mean, NRL, football, union, you name it. Within any sport, within a team, there's a spectrum of capability. Within the entire code, there is a spectrum of ability. Over the years that you've been involved in NRL, what's the breakthrough? What is it that makes a breakthrough player in a squad?
Look, that's a really tough question, because I've had, if I take someone like a Matty Ballin or a Matt Orford, both double premiership winners and 4 grand finals. Yeah, but the thing was, they were very, very disciplined. They were very, very, particular about their preparation, about how they responded to us, about their education, about how they integrated into the program. And then I take other athletes like a Watmo and and a Stewart, and they were just absolute geniuses on the field, applied themselves, but in the areas that made their football better. But both types of players extremely valuable. So the one thing that I would say, and once again, I believe it's the same with you guys at your level, there's an ability in people to be going along about their business, to be able to do their social things and have all sorts of emotions, and then when that bell goes or when that whistle goes, they switch. They are able to put all of that aside for one moment and complete the task. And that's what I've found with the successful teams that I've worked with. Every one of those sides has had this ability to be almost aloof, almost disengaged, and then bang, they happen. And you don't, and the best example is, I believe at any grand final team, any team playing finals, especially when you get to that pointy end of the major semis and then the finals, the actual grand final, you'll find that every single person in that, whether they're on the sideline or whether they're on the field, is absolutely focused, engaged, and present. And whilst we talk about things like that and we say, that's great business practice, that's great team building, that's great whatever, that's not a reality. You guys fly, you know what it is. 2 years flying, 3 years flying, 10 years flying together, you know what that is. The difference between the athletes who get close, the difference between the athletes who become absolute champions and legends, is that ability to switch on and be there when it counts. And I honestly, if you look at the players, and if you look at, I like to use grunts as an example. Your special forces guy, when they're on the job, fantastic. Pilots are probably the same. When they're on the job, when they're not on the job, they're on the end of the spectrum. They're the guys you got to go find. You got to go look for them. You got to go pull them out of the brig or wherever it is they are. But then when you want something done, bang, they're on.
So when you look at all of the teams you've been involved in, whether it's Manly, Bulldogs, New Zealand, the New Zealand national team, What are the moments that you've observed where you've just gone, yep, I feel it. It's just come together. And was there anything that led up to that, or is it something that just happens by magic? It just appears. What have you seen as being a bit of a formula to achieve that level of focus, to allow people to get into the zone and work together as a completely unified unit? And then how does that come over? Because clearly those same habit patterns would be able to cross over into anything where there's a team of people working.
Absolutely. But I suppose I'm going to sound like a bit of a broken record when it comes to this, because everybody says the same thing. But it is absolutely your leadership groups. You have individuals, and some individuals can apply themselves across different modalities of the team better than others. So some guys come in and they're great at this, some guys come in and they're great at these 3 things. And then you have these individuals who are great at about 5 things in terms of their capability to communicate with the coach, capability to communicate with their trainers, capability to understand exactly what the periodization and training is, and their capability to work amongst the playing group. And in every team that I believe has had a successful compilation or constituent, it's been that. You definitely have 4 to 5 individuals who are able to create a bar that all the other players, work hard to get to, and they're very resilient, and they're very very compliant players in terms of what's required to get the job done. New Zealand, even like I've worked with the Cook Island international sides, Samoa, and and those and New Zealand Māori, and all those teams, the successful ones who've won their games, not only just won their games, but had great culture, have had that element. I can pull out 4 or 5 guys who are athletes who are able to be very present and keep that group together.
And I think that's the same thing. I mean, whether it's a sporting team or a business that has a team, it crosses over. It's the same thing as you say, leadership. That if the leadership is not strong within your team, your team overall are going to struggle. And I think it translates directly from sport to business to, community groups to whatever it is. Anywhere where you require a level of leadership, I think you're absolutely hit the nail on the head there. When you need to have those people that have that perspective, and then everyone else is shooting for as close to that bar as possible, which is awesome. So sorry, you go.
Well, the other thing about those individuals, Sean, is that they're all really consistent. If you look at areas of their behaviour and the way they present themselves every day, they're consistent. So if they're loose, or if they're angry, or if they're happy, there's always this threshold that we know they can go to. They're never mercurial. They never suddenly be a completely different person. So, and I think that's a part of good coaching too. That consistency of personality is really important, because with that comes trust. And when I say consistency, I am really talking about what the threshold is. So everybody knows I can be a real a-hole, but they know where that ends. Everyone knows I can be fun. They know where that ends. But everyone knows where I can be cranky, and they know where that ends. It doesn't suddenly take a massive spike or a giant leap, an exponential leap into some unusual thing. And that consistency creates this bond of trust between us.
Yeah, it definitely creates certainty.
That's it. Go place. Your point, mate. You love consistency.
Yep.
Showing up.
And definitely with my inner circle group, that we call it my favourite C word, consistency. So because if you're not consistent, then you're not a very good leader, But again, how you show up is more important than what you're doing in a day-to-day when you're in a leadership role. You've got to show up in that consistent way. You've got to own it and move forward. So that's great. That's fantastic.
So what about bad leaders, Donny? What about losing? What about the downside of playing footy? What's it like when you're in an organisation or a team? They just can't seem to crack it. You're on the back of the curve. What is it that's going on in those environments? How does it feel? And what are some of the things you've seen work to get people, out of a funk? Because in COVID, there's a lot of that going on right now, and there's a lot of people that don't feel like winners. When you feel like a winner, everything's easy. What are some of your tips, mate, in terms of bouncing back, of being resilient, of surviving in an environment where winning's just not happening?
Well, that we talked about that consistency, but one of the other things is that we like, if you find in a sports team, that's a very obvious sign of a disjointed unit. Now, the first thing that we believe you've got to do is you've got to find that bond. You've got to find an element, or you've got to find an environment where people can feel their voice, feel their place, feel an ability to be heard. Because, and that sounds simple, but it's got to be a real. We talk about honesty sessions. We talk about all these things, but these are really crucial elements, because I've been part of, as you say, a team. But when you look at each individual player, they're fantastic, and they are good people. But once you through either a lack of feedback or a lack of confidence in each other, you find these little gaps opening up. And once those gaps open up, then you are going to find, people will revert to their probably their most basic form of security or self-security, or and that's where you get problems. And that's what I've. And the reason I picked that as an example is because as you go through a process of enabling individuals to speak their mind, find their trust, you definitely see a change, and you definitely see progress carried onto the field. But it's got to start somewhere, and it's always going to start from the top, and it's always going to start with creating a platform or a forum where people can have that opportunity in a secure, trusted, safe environment. I know that sounds all a bit hairy-fairy and whatnot, but you can do that with some really good strategies around, how you run your videos, it can be as simple as going through training sessions and then getting feedback on that session, and then isolating individuals to find out, why they give that feedback. And then feedback is such a powerful way of having people engage, impart, and start to believe in process, and that feedback, whether it's positive or positive negative, or positive as a, with a negative positive outcome, people crave that feedback, and whether that's through conversation, discussion, presentation, it doesn't matter. But once you open those lines and you enable them to be engaged in that, you'll be really surprised how those increments of sharing information lead to that trust element, lead to, people don't mind being told off. They just want to know, one, how did you come to that decision? And two, how are you going to help me fix it?
Pretty simple, really. Your power of debriefing. There you go again. What went wrong? What can I do about it? Donny, how quickly does it become cultural? If you have a bit of a funk and a couple of players in there that can't seem to find that level above themselves, they don't have that self-awareness, how quickly does that start to become a cultural thing in a club rather than a week-to-week thing?
Okay, depending on that individual and their influence. So if the individuals that you're talking about, if they have a negative aspect and they have a high influence and a low self-application, then you got trouble. And it's going to come in a few weeks. It will definitely come in a few weeks, especially if they have high influence. If it's the other way around, where they have low influence and, but a low application, you can sort of you can get in there and work with them as individuals, and you can slow that down. But, poor characters in your team work fast, like the undercurrent of a river. They work very fast. So you need to identify how influential those characters are on the rest of the squad, and then you need to address those individuals as best you can with the methods we discussed before, and try and either save them, bring them back into the fold, find out what it is that's making them unhappy, see where we can find common ground. But you have to do it very quickly, because the answer to your question is it's fast, Lou. It's fast.
And it comes down to that self-awareness, isn't it? And identifying identifying those traits in others. And I guess one of the challenges for you, Donny, is, you're dealing with some really challenging individuals. Some guys would be super talented, but not being talented doesn't necessarily mean you're a great person. And then you'll have great people that may not be that talented. And then you've got people coming into the club anywhere from 17 years of age up to 23. So you must have a lot of pressure to mentor and grow as a unit very, very quickly, as opposed to your average organisation where you have a spread of experience on the execution side, anywhere from a college graduate 2022 to your middle management in their 40s. So what are some of the challenges with upskilling and creating a cohesive team year after year with such a young, testosterone-driven group of individuals?
Yeah, you know what, we the two, you're always going to have the basic two. They either don't want to do enough or they want to do too much. So once again, when we design programs, pre-season periodization, we always present as much as we can to that individual to remind them why they're there. How does this help you get to this point? So in my example, I've got Des and the other coaches. Des wants you to do this. How do I get you to where Des wants you? And we always work with them around, here is the purpose. Here is the purpose. Now, the innate thing about athletes is that they have the skill already, or else they wouldn't be there in front of me. So half my job's done easily. Now what I have to do is produce the capacity in that athlete to deliver what's required in that competitive arena at the level that's required. So now we're all about, we really do make it about them. So we break them down as individuals and we just consistently work on them about what's good for you. All those measurements, all those tests, everything we do. This means that you are capable of being here. That's all it means. It means you have the capacity to return every day and take the training that we're putting into you, go home, refuel, regenerate, rejuvenate, and come back. That's all that means.
And that's a long season too, right? Like, you've got to motivate kids to do that for nearly 9-10 months of the year, right? There's no let up.
There is no let up at all. So the vets, guys who have done more than 3 or 4 pre-seasons, their bodies, their condition, their internally, their fibers, their muscles, their physiology, they're made for the whack because they've been exposed to so many years of NRL, 26 rounds, week in, week out, plus origins and internationals. So their bodies are hardened. They are definite vets. And the young guys, they come into the preseason and we beat them. We beat the shit out of them. We work them. We make them hard. We make them strong. We make them capable. We make them mentally tough. We take them to that dark place. We show them what it's like to be out there on a field, 6 minutes in NRL, 20 minutes in NRL, 40, 60, 80, and then with an extra time. And, it's not a pleasant place if you're not prepped. Now, the thing with the young guys is they suddenly realize after round 4, shit, I got to do this for another 22 rounds, and it dawns on them that it's not about the game. The game is the bonus. It's working the week, making that body resilient and, getting tenacity amongst that fiber and muscle, and mentally being able to get up the next day and say, shit, I've got to do recovery. And the next day, now I've got to train. And the next day, now I've got to train at game speed. And these are the things that these vets and these young guys are going through every day to stay at a threshold that's making it able for us to compete at NRL level.
How much has changed over the years, Donny, in terms of mindset, in terms of mental aptitude development? What have you seen change in your career at NRL?
Yeah, look, I think, and firsthand this yourself, over like when Des and I first started, we would just whip them. And luckily for us, every other NRL team was just whipping them too. So we were all even. And then as we used to run these drills, like a couple of days after the game, sometimes, a day before the game. And then eventually, but all the teams, Storm, everyone was doing it, And then as we started bringing in different expertise, we started reaching out more. We wanted to know a little bit more in depth about how different sports recovered, how different high intent sports managed to get bang for buck. I would definitely say the rugby league leads in that area now. But back then, we were taking from everyone to find the best, from AFL, from soccer, from tennis, from wherever it was. The biggest change I've definitely seen is our ability to grab live data. Now, we used to train incredibly hard, and we used to cover every system. And I think the biggest sort of part of technology we had was Polar at that time. And Polar gave us heart rate to effort, but it didn't give us like heart rate variability. It didn't give us a deeper set of metrics that we could sort of look into the physiology. So we used to just use that. But you know what? You had to do the session. Then you had to go take all the stuff away and download the session. And then that took like 5 hours to download. And then the next morning you'd come in and say, oh, we fucking missed it. Or you look at it and say, oh, we did too much, Nowadays, everything's live. Everything's live time. So we don't miss things. I can run out behind a player right now and I know what Des is looking for, and I know what the coaches want. And he's behind by, say, he's behind the play by 20 meters. So everyone else is running around at 110 meters per minute. And I can see on live GPS that there's two players out there moving at 100. They're 10 meters behind everybody all the time. So I go out and I go bang, 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 and they catch up, they move up. So now, instead of saying, right, you're going to have to make up that intensity, that speed, that effort, that repeatability somewhere, so that I can be assured that it's inside your system. Now I go out and bring them up to speed straight away. The same as if after the session, I can grab them and say, boys, everybody's great. You three, not your fault because the drills didn't allow you to, but you're 1.2 behind. And that's because the coaches pulled you out and made you do something else while you were doing that. But I need that 1.2. So this is how we're going to get it. So that live data feed, that possibility of having everything right in front, same as indoor. Indoor now we work to heart rates. We work to calories, heart rates, distance, or time, but it's all live, it's all measured. So we're never missing anything, because if I look up on the screen and your heart rate's not in that zone, I don't have to come looking for you tomorrow. I get you right now and I just go bang. So we're always on time and we're always there. So that was number one. Technology is number one. That's the number one. Number two is bringing in external expertise to help us develop processes and strong structures around mindset. So we've looked at all the experts in the world, whether they be military, police, other sports, and we've found what works for them as high-end performers. How do they keep their people? How do they keep their people on task? How do they recover their people? How do they? What type of exercises and mental skills drills do they use? So, as you know, with Afterburner, as you know, with other professionals that we've brought in who help with coaches and process and systems, that's the other big thing that we've gone to. So, and it's made a tremendous difference.
And again, the direct correlation between sporting team and business. The whole thing about using technology, having data, measuring it, and being able to respond immediately.
Goals,
and not wait until the end of the quarter and go, oh crap, where's all my money? Because you haven't looked at your financials or something. And then the same thing, actually asking people to come in and support you, give you knowledge, tools, methods and strategies to actually apply within business as well. So they directly translate between the two.
And look, that's, if you ever wanted to, work with people who you believe, that they're not at the line, then that's how you do it. You show them, you sit down and you say,
let them convince themselves.
Yeah. You say, look, this is where we are. This is where we're going. And this is where you are. Now we need you, it's no coincidence you're sitting here in this room with us. You know, you have all these qualities and skills and these abilities that have put you here. But unless you can increase these two areas here, of which I'm about to show you how, you're not going to be on that line. And once you're below the line, that means we've all got to sit back a bit. But when you discuss it like that, when you show a genuine interest in improving them, not just because the organization wants an end result. If you can sit down with individuals and say, "No, this is about you, mate. This is not fuck that stuff. Don't worry about that. But you're here. There's no way you want to be here without being, the best you can be. But this is how we're going to do it." And I really believe when you get people, and our athletes in particular, where we sit with them and we say, "Yeah, hey, the game's over there, mate. The game is the end result. The game is an accumulation of all these things that we're doing every day. The game looks after itself.
The last small win.
Yeah, you need to be here, and this is how we're going to get there." And then you can say to them, "Tell me, what are the barriers? Why can't we get there? Yeah, what do you believe is?" And you go down that, and it's all about coaching. It's all about coaching. We coach when we run drills. We yell out the speed. We yell out the meters per second, the meters per minute. We encourage and drive. We tell them what the time is on the run. We tell them where we are in a game. When they're getting up and down off the ground, we don't just leave them alone. We tell them, when you're up, take your first 3 steps. Accelerate. When you accelerate, you produce more force. You're able to produce more power.
It's a really interesting insight there, Donny. Really interesting insight there, because you think of high-performing corporate teams, business teams, and the level of coaching, the coaches per player in real high-performing environments is so high. But you go into the average corporate environment or business environment, where's the coach? No such thing. There are a whole bunch of players creating the plays that no one knows what position anyone's playing. Everyone's running around. Schoolboy football.
No, a lot of times they don't even know where the goal is. He's just kicking the ball around.
It's this ridiculous concept that you can be a high-performing corporate team but not have any coach or independent view or assessment of your performance. It's absolutely ludicrous.
You got to be coached, and it's if you want people to stay at that pointy end of intensity, if you want them to be familiar with that dark place where they just think, fuck, I just want to get out of here. But you can show them how to get out. You can show them the way to get out of that dark place. But they can be in there and they can still hear you. And I see that every day when my guys are down on the ground, and I know I'm looking at him and I know he wants to get up. I think one of the greatest, one of the philosophies amongst the coaches that I work with now, that I'm really proud of, is they don't believe in an athlete's failure. We'll exhaust every process we have, and if an athlete is failing in an area or is struggling, say a skin fold or losing weight, then what we do is we look at all the processes we've put together, and we look at all the people we've had work with that athlete. And then, something like that, if there's a barrier there, once we've exhausted our referral process, then and only then can we hand over. But up until then, that we own that. And some people say, "Oh, you shouldn't do that because it makes them weak." That's bullshit. Because I'll tell you what, if you honestly believe that, you want to think about that before you send those guys out onto that field and they bash the shit out of each other. Because what, the thing I'll tell you what I love in games is I love it when I hear comments about, "Oh, and so, I'll get up and, he's lying on the ground and I don't think that's a concussion." Commentators are the worst at it. They're the bloody worst at the moment. Like half of them, they're talking about someone, it looks like, "Oh, that was just a love tap on the chin." Geez, you see the size of the hand that touched that chin? Just rubbish like that, where people who are disassociated for too long from the game, I don't care about, mate. If any of them are watching this and they have a crack at me, it doesn't bother me, because the fact is, I make sure that I stay tight to my drills. I make sure that I still exercise myself. The reason I do that is so that when I send my men into a grid, into a drill, into an up down, into a lift, into an isolated anaerobic aerobic phosphate depletion, I remember what that feels like. And I can relate to them. And when I see exhaustion, I don't see that as weakness, because I think, yeah, I remember when I used to piss my pants when I got to that point. Or I vomited at that point. And you know, once you get away from being part of it for too long, some of these guys, you know, were they tough guys? Absolutely. Were they hard trainers? Absolutely. But I'll tell you what, 20 years, 30 years, if you haven't played the game, you know, and then you're making a comment about someone catching one on the chin and saying that they should have been able to handle that, then you've forgotten your way, man.
It's a really interesting part of leadership, that empathy, the ability to feel what other people feel. Donny, just going to go back to you for a sec, mate. This is about you. This is about the Fuse. It's about you living your purpose. Obviously, you've chosen a career stream where there's no guarantees year to year. You're not on a bonus paycheck. You know, people would perceive being a coach in this field is pretty stable, but it's not. What's it like to be in a career where you are literally having to perform for your job year on year? And what do you enjoy about that? Because obviously you've got to be a bit of a self-flagellist, mate, to get into that sort of a career stream.
All those things you just said is what's enjoyable about it. You know, it's that. As you know, I had a year off between the Bulldogs and coming back to the Sea Eagles, and I worked for the NRL and I worked for New Zealand Rugby League while that year was off. But I also dabbled in some other areas, and I actually got offered, a couple of good positions in the corporate. And it was my wife that said to me, "Look, you know, you're gonna enjoy that, and you're gonna enjoy that paycheck for about 2 months or a month and a half." She goes, "And then I'm telling you, after that, your patience and your you're gonna have to start all over again with your emphatic development and your and your interest in getting the people to be their best." Because one of the things with elite sport is, the one thing that I know for a fact is that everybody who's there wants to be there. So I'm lucky. I'm lucky in that respect. It's like recruits, you know, when you go through recruit school, the ones who don't honestly want to be there, well, they'll find their own way out. But the thing about my job is that I get up every day and I just love the fact that it's challenging in how the hell am I going to get the best out of these blokes? How am I going to get them to these levels that I want? So I've got to be clever, and it makes me learn about science, and it makes me engage with my physio and my sports scientists and and all these things. That's what excites me. That's what really motivates me and keeps me going.
That's great. And if you could, obviously, if you've got a lot of experience under your belt, and if you could go back to, we won't say little Donny, we'll say younger Donny, and younger version of yourself, and give you one piece of advice, the most impactful piece of advice you've learnt in your journey, and go and give that to your younger version of yourself, what would you say?
I would say probably just listen. And I'll tell you why I say that. I would say listen because I can remember when Ben Kennedy played for us, you know, back in 2004, I think it was 4 or maybe 5. And up until then, I was just 100 miles an hour, hell bent, do it this way. Here I am, you know, be like me, you know, get in there. I'm a midget, but don't worry about it. You got longer arms and legs, just make it happen. And, you know, shit, we used to go on runs. We used to go up to North Head. We didn't even stretch. I'd say, meet me up there at 6:30. They'd all turn up, get out of their cars, bang, the whistle would go, start running, you know. Oh, it's just a mad bastard. And so were they. They were all mad too. But I can remember one day Ben Kennedy walked into the gym. And I don't know anybody who's not familiar with Ben. He's about 6'3" or 4, and he's a mountain of a man. He's a big, and he played Kangaroos and Wallabies, won a premiership, played Origins. Yeah, he's a real top player. He walks into me and he says to me, we just done this big field session, and it was the gym. And he walked into me and he said, I'm fucked. And I looked at him, you know, now the whole squad is with me. and we're about to start training. And he just looked at me and he goes, mate, I'm empty. I haven't got anything. He goes, I can't do this session this afternoon. He said, is there any way I could come back tomorrow early and we'll make it up? And I looked at him and I was like, what the fuck is that? Because I'd never had that before. No one had ever said that to me. And I was like, I'm looking at him, right? But as I'm looking at him, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm thinking he's a big bastard for a start. And then I'm thinking wallaby, kangaroo, origins, probably that might have been his 12th or 13th year at first grade, experienced campaigner. This guy's done everything in the game and succeeded, And I'm looking at him and I thought, maybe I should trust this guy. Maybe he knows something about himself that I don't know. So I said to him, okay, I said, listen, you got to clear it with Des, because I have a rule where no one can leave training unless unless the head coach knows. So I said to him, I'm okay. I'll see you in the morning, 6 o'clock, but you got to check. So he did. And, and he went home. And I tell you, the next day, he was like a demon. He come in, he just tore the place apart. And I thought, shit, you're going to have nothing left for today. But he had a break, he refueled, and off he went. And from that time on, that sort of changed me a little bit in terms of looking at what I have in front of me, understanding the asset, and just listening to what the question, exactly what they're saying. A younger me might have stopped at, I can't do it, and not heard anything after that. A younger me might have heard, I'll come back in the morning. It was like, fuck off, the morning. Yeah. And, but I and I'm glad for that moment. And that would help me be a hell of a lot more wise and choosing who I could trust. And look, were the young guys going to get away with that? No, they weren't. But definitely Menzies, Lyon, as the guys got older, and Ben was great because he said to everybody, as that got out that sort of happened, he was adamant. He just said, anybody tries and bullshit him, then you deal with me. And that's the kind of leader he was. And so I would say, when people are talking to you, man, watch and listen, because if you man, there were times when people told me they were tired, they're exhausted, and I just fucking keep going. I mean, what's that? I mean, asking a quick, why? Oh, because we've run so far. There, that's a keep going. But it could be I got pain in my ankle. It could be anything. So open your ears and take a little bit of time to listen to what's been said and then put it into whatever perspective.
Well, I reckon on that note, it's pretty powerful there as well.
Indeed.
We always hear about pulling the cotton wool out of your ears and stuffing it in your mouth. Donny, mate, part one. There's probably plenty more to go through with your insights into managing large groups of high-performing people. And it's an area, I think, that many corporates should take the time to listen to and really understand that the role of a coach, the role of a mentor, the ability to sit back and listen to their people. Because, again, it's a little bit... I remember reading a survey somewhere that said 69% of employees believe leaders are in a leadership role for themselves, not for the people that they lead. Yeah. And it's a really toxic way to be. So, mate, thanks so much, Donny, for taking time out of your afternoon, mate, racing back for training to talk to us. Really appreciate it, Donny. Thank you.
You're very welcome, boys. A great job you're doing. And look, I agree with you wholeheartedly about the corporate, coaching. Even me in my last 5 years, I've learned more about applying coaching techniques, than ever. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. And I strongly urge corporations in that if they want to grow and they want to get the best out of their people who they selected, then start coaching on the floor.
And that wraps up another episode of The Few. Thank you to our partners, Afterburner, for team building, development and alignment. We understand now how important it is to have the right people around you. Get them on board with where you want to go. Momentum Media, the largest industry publisher in the country, connecting your business to the Australian community. ICMI, Australia's premier speaker bureau, representing the few that do fulfill their life's purpose. And finally, Sean's Inner Circle, the business coaching organisation for small and medium enterprises looking to make that next step. Thanks again for listening in and downloading today. Please leave a review on whatever platform you are currently listening to this podcast, and reach out to our partners who can help you make the transition to the few. Nice one. Thanks, Donny. Take care, mate. Talk again soon.
Talk soon.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Cheers.